All right, today we're going to be looking at ecosystems and the forces that shape ecosystems. So the first main idea is ecological succession. That would be the changes that an ecosystem undergoes over time. And although ecosystems look like they are stable and static, ecosystems are always changing. There's a series of predictable changes that will occur in a community over time, and that again is ecological succession. And some of those forces can be natural or they can be influenced by humans. So if we were looking at the very beginning, the start of an ecosystem, it occurs on a surface where no soil exists. So if we went out to the big island of Hawaii where there's an active volcano, um, primary succession would be the formation of land by volcanic eruption. The next type of succession is secondary succession. It occurs from a disturbance that does not remove the soil. So that could be abandoned farmland. It could be a wildfire that comes in and burns down the woods. And as you can see the picture on the right, you've got a climax forest. So that would be the end portion of a forest. Could be a rainforest or deciduous forest. Fire comes in, it burns down all the living trees and leaves layers of ash and then seeds that have fallen off from those trees. Those buried seeds start sprouting, roots regenerate, plants start to regrow, and by the fourth frame you see a recovered forest. You can separate the living and non-living things in an ecosystem. You have the biotic factors and the abiotic factors. And as a review, biotic means living, and that would be the plants, animals, bacteria, and fungus. Abiotic would be the rocks, air, water, nutrients, wind, sunlight, soil, and weather. There's a lot of different community interactions that will happen. Competition can occur where more than one organism uses the same ecological resource at the same time. And that could be competition over water, nutrients, light, food, or space. Now for an overall view of things that shape ecosystems, if you look at two ideas, first is weather and the second is climate. The weather would be the day-to-day conditions of Earth's atmosphere. So that would be if you looked outside or if you looked at the thermometer and you got the day's temperature, that would be the weather. The climate would be the average year after year conditions of temperature and precipitation in a region. So climate would be what you would come to expect on a year-to-year basis from the area that you're in. And the forces that shape that are heat in the atmosphere, latitude, transport of heat by winds and ocean currents, amount of precipitation, and shape and elevation of land. So one influence on an ecosystem and on the Earth as a whole is the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect occurs because carbon dioxide, methane, water vapor, and other gases in the atmosphere act as a trap for heat energy. So if you looked at the figure on the right, you see most of the energy from the sun is coming in and striking Earth. Some of it that strikes the Earth would be radiated back up and out into space and wouldn't be heating the Earth. But greenhouse gases trap some of that heat and reflect it back towards the Earth, so continuing to heat the surface of the Earth. So the energy is converted into heat, radiated back into the atmosphere. Some heat does not get radiated to the atmosphere and does not pass out. So one of the major influences on climate of an area is latitude. One thing that affects that is the Earth being tilted on its axis. Solar radiation hits Earth at different angles at different times of the year. Earth has three main climate zones. There's polar, temperate, and tropical. And this unequal heating of Earth's surface drives wind and ocean currents. So you can imagine the further you are towards the North Pole, you have a low angle of incoming sunlight. And then if you're close towards the equator, sunlight is directly overhead. So it's the directness of the rays of light that affect the temperature of the area. So a little preview of how wind works. Warm air rises, cool air sinks. So if you've ever been looking out over Rancho Santa Fe, you see hot air balloons going. The reason that those hot air balloons are able to fly is because warm air rises. So the heat from the furnaces on the hot air balloons get pushed into the balloon, inflating it and causing it to rise in the air. The same idea applies to wind that goes over the surface of the planet. Warm air at the equator rises, cool air at the poles sinks, and this creates currents. Um, this wind, this mixing of wind helps to transport heat energy and transport it across the globe and evenly heat the globe. If you look at the right, this is a small example of what that in Hawaii, we would get a deterioration of surf conditions in the afternoon because what happened is the land would heat up and the air over the land would rise, causing wind to come in offshore, blowing behind the waves and knocking them down and making them slushy. So ocean currents are also continually circulating. Cold water near the poles sinks and flows to the ocean bottom. It will rise again in warmer regions. Surface water is also moved by wind. Currents transport heat energy, and currents can warm or cool the air above them. So that would be one of the things keeping land in certain areas much warmer and seasonable, the land that's near the ocean than the other land that's further inland, away from those warm ocean currents.